Hello everybody and welcome to Adobe Live. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we are streaming and creating today and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. My name is Flynn and we are continuing our spooky season, spooky week. This week, I guess. Yeah, we had a great stream yesterday. I'm good at this. At 10 o'clock today, just a couple of hours ago with Annika Agarwal. Go check that out. It was really fun. Creating some invitations and evites and things like that, showing off some new features in Adobe Express. Go check that out. But we are here today also hanging out with the fantastic designer and artist from Australia, Jeremy Lord. Hi, Jeremy.
Hello, how's everybody going?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you, chat? What is up? Let me see. How about I open chat? What do you think? Let's do that.
Probably a judicious call.
It could be a good thing to do. Let us know if you're in chat. Ghost in the chat we were doing before with Annika. So if you don't have anything to say, you can just throw in a little ghost emoji, and that's always great. Thanks, Misty. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so here we are. We're hanging out with Jeremy Lord, and we're going to do some spooky stuff. I'm trying to remember. I think we did something spooky last year as well. We had you on. I'm trying to remember what we did. What you did, and I talked over.
Headless Horseman thing. No, actually, no, sorry. It was in 2022, so 2 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that one. I'm just trying to remember.
Yeah. I think last Halloween, maybe I was away. We didn't do a stream.
Yeah, you might have been away.
Anyway, yeah, we're back. We're back this time. I'm doing another Halloween one.
By popular accord. Okay, so yeah, let's jump across. Like it's always good to jump in. I love you've started with a sketch, and I love it when you come in with a sketch because Johanna and I were chatting, and then we see it, and it's like we have this I have this problem sometimes with your sketches. I'm sure you don't. I know you don't feel the same way, but I'm often like, that's cool. Like, kind of let's just leave it as is. Like, it's so far through, I think. But yeah, anyway, I love the blue lines, love the sketches, and both of these look super cool.
I do have that problem actually, and I think it's a pretty common thing where it's like you do the sketch and then you clean it up and you finish it and you're just like, kind of like the sketch a bit better.
Yeah.
It's a pretty common theme, but I think it's one of those things that's just like the sketch leaves a little bit to the imagination, and it's just kind of like not everything is finished. And so I think that's probably something that just kind of like explains that a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. There.
Sketches.
You go.
Sorry.
You go. I'm talking over you.
Mostly just kind of like we've got sort of 50 minutes to get through this, so I just kind of wanted to come in with something, hit the ground rolling. So we can kind of get through a reasonable amount today and not kind of leave it a little bit kind of unfinished. So came up with this idea, these two kind of sketches, and I think I'll work on the one on the right probably today. But the idea here was kind of like still playing WoW, still trying to get that bloody Headless Horseman mount. And so I thought I'd kind of do a bit of a riff on the Headless Horseman, except he's just kind of like, doesn't really have a horse. He's just a horseless, headless horseman. And so the one on the left is kind of like, I don't know if this is a reference that's going to hit with everybody here, because it's a bit of an old one, but kind of wanted that idea of like the Garbage Pail Kids, those illustrations, those cards. If you don't know those, go and look them up. They're pretty fun. They're a little bit disgusting and like gory in a cartoony way. But yeah, they're super fun to do. I wanted this kind of like Napoleon kind of vibe where he's like takes himself super seriously, but he's kind of like got a teeny little weeny little axe and a broomstick with a kind of like mop head horse. But I kind of dig the dynamic and the pose of the one on the right. So we're going to work that one up in a pretty simple kind of way. And I'm going to switch it up to what I would normally do, which is kind of a super clean outlines and that kind of stuff. So I'm just brought this in to a bigger kind of canvas, to an A3 size, sorry. And we're going to just kind of recenter this a little bit, or it's probably just going to make my canvas a little bit bigger just so that it kind of fits in there a little bit more, so it's a bit more centered. And then basically what we can do is we can just kind of start going straight into inking on this. So whenever I start anything like this, I've got like a default style that I will tend to kind of gravitate to always with this, which is kind of like nice, clean, fat inking lines. So if I drop this down, I kind of create a new layer, drag this out. I will generally use a kind of like a hard edge round inking brush like this and just black, and just go in with these kind of like tapered lines and try and get something really kind of smooth and quite graphic in kind of an illustration sense. But yeah, that's always kind of like, all right, I don't know what to do, I'm going to do this. But it's also a good idea to think about like what's the kind of the graphic style that you want for this. What are you going to go for? And because I've kind of done this like super clean line work style that I feel comfortable with doing, but potentially maybe getting a little bit kind of maybe bored is a strong word, but just kind of like to try something new every now and then. I've started trying to sort of play with something a little bit more like, you can see that it's a drawing kind of thing a little bit more. Like those clean lines feel very vector, feel very kind of clean and settled and very kind of locked in. And I like that, but I also kind of like it when you can kind of see that it's a drawing. So I'm going to try and kind of work in that way a little bit more today, focusing on the kind of like the quality of the inking and line work, if you will. And I think a lot of people kind of forget how expressive line work can be, and kind of how much information it can convey when you start playing around with it properly, in terms of like, let's get into the glove in the hand here. He's kind of like pointing his axe at us in that way. So we've got all these kind of like foreshortenings and all this kind of jazz. But what I will do is I'll kind of drop the smoothing down to like a 14% down from like 30, which is where I normally have it, to have those kind of clean lines, and start to kind of like get in with a little bit more variation. And so one of the fundamental rules of kind of line work is stuff that's closer to you. I'll do this really kind of quick and roughly, and then we can get into the kind of the start. But stuff that's closer to you, or that kind of is in a little bit of shadow, should have thicker line work, right? So all this like kind of axe that's really like, it's the closest thing to us, should have the kind of like some of the thickest line work in this drawing.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And then you can save like some of those variations. I'm doing this very, very like roughly, as you can see, but you can save some of that kind of variation for little kind of details and scratches and that kind of stuff. But then as we get kind of further down into the actual artwork, things like his vest, or like his kind of the rest of his hand or his arm, shouldn't have the same line weight to it, because otherwise it becomes a little bit kind of tricky to read what's actually going on in the image in that way. And so doing that, you can kind of see, it gives it just a little bit of depth. So that's kind of like fundamental principle number one, is to try and work with, you know, thin lines, thicker lines, and kind of have that shape language in there as well. But also potentially kind of work at it a little bit. So normally what I would do is I would do kind of like long strokes that kind of don't stop. And there'd be, you know, in a lot of my artwork, there tends to be like, especially if I'm doing long kind of curve lines and stuff, I'll have to like do it, and then it's like, oh no, I messed it up. All right, try again, do the whole thing over again. I've never kind of really gone in and done this like sketching kind of thing that you tend to do when you're like starting out in drawing. You will do this kind of like less confident line in that way. So it sounds like a bad thing. There's like going back to this kind of sketching thing. But if you kind of, if I kind of trying to sort of force myself to do a little bit of that and kind of just work the line a little bit more, I actually quite like this kind of like angularity and this variation in the line that I'm getting. And it doesn't have to be too clean. Like normally I would go in and just like really clean this up and make sure that everything's connecting and cut off all the bits that are sticking out and all that. And I'm trying to I'm trying to change, man. I'm trying to change. I'm trying to be a better man.
Well, it's just cool to like
Um,
try different things, right? Like keep it fresh.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And just see like how you can work at something with that line work and spend maybe just a little bit more time and like brain power on that line work, where in the past what I've kind of done is it tends to be a little bit more just like you've got your sketch, it's all kind of done. Now it's just kind of like, I guess mindlessly might be a little bit of a strong word, but it's just kind of going in and copying basically what you did on the line work, but with the sketch. Sorry, copying what you did with the sketch, but just kind of making it go onto the line work. And
Yeah.
it, yeah, it definitely has its place, and it definitely is something that I'm not like saying like you'll never see me do this again. But it's kind of fun to try kind of what I'm doing with this at the moment and see kind of where that lands, and just yeah, like sculpt the line a little bit more. And so you go from what I had before, which is this very like uniform line, like this kind of thing, which is very like cartoony and can still be quite like expressive, to having something a little bit more just like just got a little bit of an edge to it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really like doing, even though yeah, it takes more time. um it's definitely just like I really quite like it.
Yeah.
Whoops.
That's cool. We were talking about Tim Burton earlier today. And that's kind of can sometimes have like quite a scratchy kind of style, right? Like if I'm remembering
Yeah, 100%.
remembering correctly. And that's a stylistic choice. It's not because the animators didn't know how to draw straight lines. It was, you know, it's a bit of like attitude towards the edginess and the alternative kind of perspective of storytelling. Like it's like, how can we also make this a bit weird and a bit off center and a bit, you know, scratchy and sketchy and nightmarish and, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like just yeah, I think it's just something that is quite good to do, and it makes sense on something like this. You mentioned like Tim Burton, like obviously having something that feels a bit like Burton-esque on something like this is never going to be inappropriate. Like it's never going to be wrong
Right.
to have that on a Halloween type kind of illustration, right? Like that's always going to be like, yep, that makes sense. But yeah.
That's cool. And we were talking about favorite Tim Burton film, so let's roll that across. I know a couple of people in chat were here for that as well. I did Mars Attacks because it's surprising to a lot of people that was Tim Burton, and it's a ridiculously bad and good movie at the same time. But do you have one? Do you have a favorite? And is it Edward Scissorhands?
No.
Trying to pick you.
Dude, you know what? I think I have to be potentially maybe a bit boring and just go Batman 1 and 2, Batman and Batman Returns.
Batman.
Yeah.
Very good.
I just yeah, I think for me that's just like that's super Burton at its kind of peak. Edward Scissorhands 100% is like very, very Burton as well.
Yeah.
But Batman is just like yeah, and the story of him kind of casting Michael Keaton as Batman instead of like, you know, some like burly, like buff, muscular kind of dude. There's all these kind of things about him getting in a little bit of trouble and like trying to get that across the line to Warner Brothers, and like just really just like bold choice, and I think just pays off massively. Like for somebody like a character like Batman to have that, I think is just really cool, and just the aesthetic is like super Burton-y as well.
Yeah.
So Batman, and probably close second if I can have a second.
You can have a second, yeah.
And if I can't, I'm taking one. Um, I might have to say it again, maybe another like controversial one, but because it's actually not a Tim Burton directed movie, but the art direction is Tim Burton, is Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Johanna in chat as well has also said Nightmare Before Christmas. Yeah. It's a safe bet for sure.
Such a great story, such a like cool idea.
It's very cool.
All right. So again, let's move. I'm going to move forward a little bit kind of faster with this and not worry too much about kind of the ins and outs of this kind of sketch.
Yeah.
And the line work. Like this is something that I probably end up cleaning up. Something else that I'm trying to do a little bit more as well in my work is trying to incorporate the shading into the line work itself.
Yeah.
So things like this, like adding in actual kind of like black areas to the sketch and kind of getting that in there.
Like a bit more of a harder shadow kind of thing.
Yeah, like just something a little bit more kind of comic book style is not something that I have done a lot in the past. That's usually just been kind of line work and then shading on another layer. But it's something that I quite enjoy doing now, and it's like I really like the results that it kind of gives me. So definitely something that I'm kind of trying to include into my kind of roster of working in that way.
Yeah, we've talked about like influences many times over the years, like with like I think more other illustrators I think we've talked about. But have you ever kind of been inspired or looked at comic book artists at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's kind of like, you know, where it all starts generally for kind of a kid in the West.
Yeah.
Like learning, like getting into drawing. Well, usually the first kind of port of call will be comic books, right? Like it might necessarily be like anime or manga. Maybe that's not so much the case nowadays, but definitely 175,000 years ago when I was that age, that was like, yeah, like if you were into drawing, you were reading comics and that kind of vibe. And so definitely a lot of those kind of people, like I remember when I discovered Joe Madureira, for instance, I was like, oh man, what is this? This is crazy. Like the inking and the detail level is nuts. Travis Charest, like all those kind of like artists, a little bit like very different style for Travis Charest, but just like, yeah, absolutely insane work. And so there's definitely some people that like I will look at and try and kind of emulate their work in that way and see like what's the like study the line work, study the way things are done and like how I can kind of try and get that into my work as well. And I'd say that's probably something that everybody should keep doing as much as possible all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Just reminded me, yeah, I never really like remember like who the comic book artists are. Like I don't remember the names in the same way that I should. But I do remember there was one particular artist. I do read Marvel comics, like the digital version, and every now and then I kind of don't like the style or something, and it can really change like how you feel about how they've drawn a particular character as well. I think is a big one. Like sometimes people will draw Cyclops as this really skinny kid. I'm like, he must be 45 in this, like chronologically in this story. He looks like he's about 13. Like I feel like there's a bit of a miss thing, but yeah, there's definitely one particular artist that really stands out at me, and I absolutely cannot remember or even took notice of their name. But whenever there's a series that's done by this person, I'll read it, even if I don't particularly like the story, just because it's such a captivating and it could be the coloring, could be part of it, could be who they're partnering with, because that's a big thing, right? The line work and then the inking or the coloring.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting. Like, have you ever done anything like that? Like, why is it in comics that they're separate? Is it just because of how much they have to make? So there's just so many, because you're not doing one page, right? You're doing like 28 pages or something. Is it a volume thing? Or?
I think so. Yeah. There's a few people who do their own coloring as well. And it's a good question. Like I could like guess as to like a reason as to why that happens, and like why does the color guy differ from the line work artists. I don't know for sure. I would imagine it probably is just what you said. It's just like I'm good at doing the drawing. There's even a bunch of stuff where it's like I'll just do the sketch and character designs, and then someone else will do the inking, and then a third person will come in and do the actual coloring as well on top of that. So
yeah,
there can be quite a few different levels. It could just be level of comfort. Like, I don't know that there's anything that says that if you're a comic book artist, you only do the line work and you're not like allowed to do the inking. Like, I'm sure that if you were comfortable doing the inking, that would be okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's just interesting that it's a thing that's just kind of known in that field.
I've really looked it up, actually, like in terms of like why have a different person kind of do the coloring, because it will have a huge impact on that. And like, there's definitely like, you know, if I'm kind of at a bookstore or something and like looking at new manga, new anything to kind of pick up, like the art style will have a huge impact on whether or not I picked that up or kind of tried something else. In saying that, actually, I've just started reading Dan to Dan.
Oh yeah, what is that?
Which is like, so it's a not really new. There's a lot of chapters out already. It's been around for a little while, but Netflix has just picked it up. So
I think that's why I might have heard of it.
A lot of the world is now kind of like, oh, what is this thing? And the artwork is just insane. Like the guy Yukinobu Tatsu, who does the artwork, is just like, he's next level. And that's definitely someone who, like, I'm looking at that and going, all right, I'm going to go through and as just kind of like as practice, basically, I'm just going to literally just go through and try and like copy all of the artwork that he's created on every single one of his like frames, on his slides. Like, everything is just out of this world. And so looking at that and trying to sort of go like, all right, how does he do it? Like, what's the inking process? There's no color, obviously. It's manga, so there's no color in it. There is obviously in the anime, and it's really interesting to kind of see that process. But that kind of the quality of the drawing and the posing as well, like the different poses that he can come up with for his characters. Like, you look at one of his drawings and it's just, there's never anybody in the background just not doing anything, just kind of standing there. There's always just like life happening.
Right.
And the ideas that this person can come up with to kind of create like all of the characters in his page have just like life and kind of really work super well together in a way. And it's just incredible to see, you know. Like, I can't remember seeing that to that level from anybody in kind of recent memory.
That's cool.
So if you haven't checked it out, absolutely recommend it for sure, because it is just like, the story is excellent too. Like, the work is just amazing.
What's the best way to read it? Should I wait for the Netflix thing? Is there it looks like there's a series, like an animated series as well? I think
there is an animated series.
Johanna
Netflix
in
is
chat
doing it.
started watching it.
Um,
Mm.
so Netflix obviously is probably like the easiest way to go, but
Yeah.
they've picked this up quite far behind. So they have
Right.
just aired, I think, like chapter 4.
Right.
And they are, I think it is now there's like 180 chapters.
Right.
So you're gonna be
Classic
watching this for
anime.
a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like this guy like does like that's the other thing. Like this guy's doing these pages, like 20 pages of manga. Every week he does these at the level that he's doing it. It's like, wow, that is just incredible, man.
Yeah.
But I have started work using the Shonen app. So Shonen is like Shonen Jump is a big like manga publisher across the world, like from Japan, but like it's kind of everywhere around the world now. And they have an app and a website, obviously, but it's just kind of also works as an app that I've been using. That
Shonen Jump.
on my it's a big kind of like yellow icon.
Yeah.
So I've been reading it on my iPad.
Yeah. That's where I read comics too. I think iPad's like perfect for comics.
Yeah. So like, like I think it's like $4 a month and you basically get this like crazy library of anime that you can get through for like $4 a month. That is ridiculous. So yeah, I've been just kind of watching it through, reading it through that, and just ripping through it because it's just insane.
Yeah.
And taking like screen grabs of the artwork and trying to sort of go like, how can
How'd
I
they do that? Yeah.
How can I work that into my work? Because that is just like next level.
Yeah,
like
that's interesting.
Yeah, the story's super fun and interesting as well.
Oh, that's cool. Well, there you go. Go check it out. Let's continue our anime conversation. Arcane. I think you are probably quite a big fan. I think we spoke about that quite a bit. That's the series based on
season 2
League of Legends. Yeah, and the second season is coming out. So
it's not out yet.
It's not out yet. I don't even think the trailer's out yet, but they're kind of teasing the second season. So who knows when we'll get it? But
right.
That was something that blew me away with the animation style and this like gritty, matte kind of look that I can understand getting for in a 2D setting. Like I kind of get, I guess, how you would digitally do something like that. But then everyone was walking around and doing stuff in this 3D space, and there was all this depth and, of course, incredible animation. That's something that just absolutely blew me away. Like I felt like I was in the future. I didn't understand anything.
I had the same thought. Like the 3D that has like painterly textures has been done before, but not like that. Like
not like that.
Was just like, wow. Like I know I'm watching 3D, but you could fool me. Like you could fool me to think like, yeah, this is 2D. Like, it was so well done. And like, like I never really got into League of Legends very much. So like, it didn't really mean anything to me on that level.
Yeah. I think it's all retconned anyway. I think they've just taken the characters and made it, as far as I can tell. Because I've never played it either. But there you go.
Yeah, I'm massively looking forward to season 2 of that, because just the art style of that was, I think, like just outstanding. Really like just amazing.
Yeah, I feel like it's the benchmark that anyone else will be looking at it going, oh my God, what do we do? How do we compete against that? Yeah. That's cool.
For time. All right. So we're going pretty good. The inking's kind of done. And so like, again, like what I like about this compared to what I would kind of like normally do is I feel like there's a little bit more kind of like dynamism to this. There's a little bit more movement. You can kind of see my work in this, whereas generally speaking, my drawings tended to be a little bit more like clean and settled and a little bit more kind of like lost that kind of warmth of like doing it by hand, if you will. So yeah, like again, like it's not something that it's like, oh, I'm never doing that again. But it's nice, as you said, like it's nice to kind of try something new, and see like how can I do this kind of work, and how do I work it into what I do, and how that kind of comes through.
Yeah.
And when it works, it's something that's like, yeah, right, I'm really cool. Like I'm really, really glad that I tried this, and like working with that style, because it's just very pleasing, very satisfying to like try a different thing and have it work. It's a really nice feeling. It's something that I haven't done in a long time, so it's kind of nice to have that.
The horse is super cool, by the way, with the
bats.
tongue out and the button eye. I think it's got a lot of attitude.
These bats are just going to be kind of lasso tool, because they can be really just a bit more kind of janky, and just sharp. All right, and let's get into some coloring.
Nice. I just finished up Critical Role season 3 as well. I thought while we're to round out our animation series. Have you watched any of that?
No. There's my list of like anime to watch just keeps growing and growing.
Yeah,
and growing, and like,
that's the problem with stuff like that. This is much shorter than that. There's 3 seasons. It's based on the podcast Critical Role by all the voice actors. You would know a lot of the Blizzard characters are voiced, like Illidan. Stuff like that. Name escapes me. Johanna will help me out. She listens to it. But yeah, it's like a 2-year campaign that's basically distilled into a couple of seasons. And that's really good. And I think they've really found their animation stride as well. The 3rd season, no spoilers, but the 3rd season animations are like, wow, they've stepped this up. Like it's really, really crazy. It's very good.
I'll check it out. All right, so with
Matthew Mercer, yes, thanks, Joe. Matt Mercer. I don't know how I didn't remember his name.
That random name rings a bell.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is I'm kind of going to like turn off the lights, right? So it's like something that I like to work. It's obviously this is night. It's going to be like a nighttime thing. There's going to be some kind of like ghoulish lighting happening. So I'm going to scratch the white out. I'm just going to go into my hue sat menu and drop that down by a little bit to kind of 50%. And then I'm going to give him a little bit of a kind of like a base to work off. So I've got this circle in the background. So I'm going to get that in as soon as possible. Probably make it just a little bit bigger than I need, and then I can rescale it. Don't want him to be black because I can't see it. If I do that, okay, that'll do.
Yes, oh, it's a nice color.
Yeah, it's not bad actually. It could be like a giant like blood moon kind of thing.
Yeah,
cool. So he's just going to sit on his own layer for now, and I'm going to pick a kind of like a base color for this guy. So I want a kind of like something to kind of contrast with something. So orange or like green and blue are sort of like quite similar, as you can see here. We've got blue, we go straight into green, but orange and blue are on opposite ends of the spectrum. So we could go for like a hot cold kind of thing, which could work. So overall, let's go into the blues for the guy, and then any kind of lighting can be kind of like a pop of color. You can keep it cool. So green and blue, like blue overall with a green lighting, you'll make it quite cold. Kind of purple overall with an orange lighting will make it a little bit warmer. How you kind of play with those overall tones can have a pretty big impact on that. So let's maybe go into the purples a little bit, and we're going to go with like a desaturated kind of relatively dark purple. We can mess around with that color a little bit later on. But now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go using my lasso tool. So I've got a couple of ways that I kind of do this, depending on how thick my line work is and how easy it's going to be for me to do that. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just kind of go around the inside of this and just kind of thicken that line work up a little bit with a color. And then I can come in with a lasso tool and I've got a little bit more kind of like margin for mistakes within that.
Yeah.
And literally just kind of go in and fill that in. Right. So I want something that's going to be kind of like a base layer, that it's going to allow me to kind of work on something. So I only want to kind of do the work once. And you can see, like, you're familiar with a lot of my other work. Like zooming in on this, you can see just how like loose and unclean and like air quotes unfinished this line work is compared to what I would normally do. But that's the thing, and like there's a part of me even right now like going in and zooming on that, it's like, oh, man, clean it up.
Right.
No. This is what you're trying to do. Like that's how it's supposed to look. Leave it.
And on the color thing, question from chat from RB. It is great to have you back in chat, by the way. Welcome back. Do you have a favorite set of colors to work with, Jeremy?
I do, yeah. So usually my themes are like more like anime, manga, pop culture kind of stuff. So I'll tend to work with sort of like more kind of like punky colors, and kind of like neons. So basically kind of, yeah, like bright pink, bright yellow, neon blues, and then any kind of like darker color that can kind of complement that a little bit. But those are kind of the colors that I will tend to kind of gravitate to. If I can jump in online actually and just kind of show that real quick. So if you just like, yeah, just looking at my like website, for instance, you'll see immediately like what I'm talking about with those. These are the colors that I tend to kind of like gravitate around when I'm working with this, because it needs to be kind of like punky and poppy and a little bit cyberpunk. But every now and then it can be also kind of fun to explore something a little bit kind of different on something like this, and play with that. But yeah, I definitely will have a kind of a default kind of color palette for stuff. But again, like that's for personal things, right? When you're working with clients, like they'll probably have like brand colors, or they'll have a theme that they need to go for. So like, for instance, at the moment, I'm doing 2 jobs at the moment for this company. And the first job was kind of like horror plants in that kind of environment. And those colors were real kind of like a little bit more aligned with the colors that I would work with. But then the second project is a lot more military based. So it's like camos and olives and orange and black, and that kind of stuff. Which
that seems like very different for you.
It's super different, but like it again, like, hey, yeah, let's do it. Why not? Like, love it. All right, so we've got the base here of this character. I've filled the entire thing with the same kind of color, mostly because then I can kind of lock that color and then start to mess around with different kind of things, right? So here we're going to sort of work on a similar kind of layer, but I can lock the transparency, which is this little kind of like checkerboard icon up here. And what that's going to do basically is it's going to allow me to come in with a slightly kind of like different color. So let's go into the browns down here, staying in those kind of like darker tones. But now I don't have to worry too much about like what's going to happen with these kind of colors and where I need to go. I've already done the careful work of like filling this in with that single color once. And because I've locked it on that layer, I don't need to do it again. And so basically, if I pick like, let's go and let's draw the axe in, maybe go back into the kind of the blues, get a bit of the desaturation going. Now if I'm painting over here, nothing happens because that layer is on the transparency lock, right? So if I do that, you'll see it kind of goes away. But if I do this, I can kind of just not worry too much about making my selections and that kind of thing. It just makes my life just a little bit easier. Even if I'm working on a separate layer, I could do the same thing. So if you're not super keen, or if you're a little bit kind of hesitant to do this and like not do it on the same layer, you can make a new layer, hold down the Option or the Alt key when you hover in between those two layers, and make it a clipping layer. And that will effectively do the same thing because it's clipped to the layer underneath it, right? So now let's say, like, I don't know, let's say I'm going to come in with just so you can kind of see what I'm doing, a bright yellow, and I'm going to paint this axe head. It's going to do a similar kind of thing to what I had before. It's only painting on top of that. The difference is here, that information still exists. It's just being clipped by the layer underneath.
Right.
Whereas if I lock that layer, that information just doesn't get painted because it's getting painted on a transparency. So it really is just down to what you're comfortable with and how you like to work in that sense. Something else that I'll do often when I'm doing this is I'll go in like straight onto that layer, which is kind of one of the reasons I'm maybe like working with a slightly different layer setup here, just with the one layer. Make a selection of his little kind of like foulard, or whatever the hell that is. Hide the selection, so Command H, and then bring up that same menu again with Command U, and just kind of see like where that sits. So like this is good for when I don't really know for sure, like what color would the white be in that light? It'd be a little bit kind of blue, but I can't really be bothered. So I'm just gonna like do this. This gives me a little bit of control over kind of like how that looks. And it's more of a like, how'd you choose that color? Like, I kind of didn't. It just kind of knew it when I saw it, kind of thing.
Eyeballed it.
And yeah, basically, yeah. So, and again, like we can continue this kind of like color theme that we have across all these kind of like bits that would be kind of made of leather, and like maybe get a little bit of difference in between the jacket area and the rest of the shirt. So again, Command H to hide that, and then we can maybe give him like a slightly kind of purpley shirt. That'll do. And then the pants can just stay like that. The belt buckle will... It's always good if you can sort of, try and limit potentially the amount of different colors you have and stuff. So things that make sense to be different colors, to be the same color, can definitely actually be the same color, just to kind of hold continuity of your work. But now I'm going to do the part that I'm looking forward to the most, which is this kind of like flame, kind of see-through ghost of a head kind of thing with a little skull in it. So I'm going to make an outline. I'm going to go with a kind of like a whatever. I'm just going to pick a green. Like, let's go with a super, super, super bright green. Doesn't really matter because, again, I can edit this later on. I'm going to stick this underneath my base layer. And I'm just going to do an outline here. And I'm probably going to want the smooth tool to be, the smoothness of this to be back up a little bit, because I want the flame to kind of feel a little bit kind of smoother in that way, whereas the rest of the line work can be a little bit kind of clean, a bit kind of dirty, a little bit more organic. This I want to be kind of a little bit more graphic in that sense.
And there can be a bit of a contrast, right? Like, can work to the advantage where one, like, it's quite sketchy, but then it's like, but when there's something like fire, it's a little bit more fluid. Don't know if fluid's the right word for a fire, but you know what I mean. It's going to look smoother, I guess.
Yeah, but like that's the thing. Like, my fire can be like, I could do this thing that's like really like angular and like really and different. Again, like it depends on the kind of the graphic value that I'm looking for. But I'm keen to kind of get this kind of style in here and get a little bit of that difference. As you said, this kind of like the sweet and savory, a little bit of like the angularity and sharpness of the character versus the airiness and floatiness of the head.
Yeah.
Is going to be quite important. So once that outline's done, I can come in with my lasso tool and fill this in quite quickly. Remember to breathe.
Oh.
And I'm going to pop this actually underneath my sketch layer just so I can kind of see those areas that I had blocked out for these kind of little gaps in there. There we go. And now I can bring that back to here.
Beautiful.
Okay. So let's now go on and properly break up this kind of background here and get that to be nice and dark. And this is what I mean when I was talking earlier about kind of like turning off the lights. Give it, so it's not black. We want just kind of like maybe this kind of purple or, yeah, like a dark, really, really kind of like dark purple. And we can give this guy a little bit of a glow as well. So let's go in and go outer glow, and we want the size to be quite big and the opacity to be dropped down, just so it's got this kind of like faint glow.
Yeah,
it's gonna look quite nice. And then we can also try and see what happens if we do like an inner glow, and that's quite cool as well, cool. Right? So there's a little bit of a kind of a glow on the inside. We can kind of make that a different color if we want to, and kind of see where that goes. But I'm actually going to try and do this by kind of hand and eyeballing it a little bit. Oh, and I didn't apply my outer glow. Here we go. Sorry about that. There we go. All good. Bingo. So now I'm actually going to have to be a little bit kind of courageous here, and I'm going to have to apply this outer glow, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer mask on this, and I'm going to use my gradient tool in a way that's kind of going to try and get a little bit of a glow from the inside, but a bit of see-throughness from the inside, which is what we couldn't get before with our kind of inner glow. So I'm using the gradient tool on my layer mask, and I'm going with a radial blur, right? And I'm just going to kind of do something like this, and you'll see that's kind of made this thing, but the effect is doing funny things to it. And so because I've got a gradient kind of erasing with a blur on top of that with a neon glow, it's not really kind of doing what I want it to. So I actually have to right click on this and rasterize this layer style, which means my neon glow is now locked in. So that's what I mean by it's like you got to be a little bit kind of confident about what you're doing with it in that sense. But again, can be something that you will want to kind of work with a little bit later on. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to backtrack a bunch. And I'm actually going to put this guy on here, and I'm going to duplicate this. So save this for later, stick that back on here, rasterize that, and put my layer mask on there. So now basically I've got a second one behind here that I can kind of control the opacity of, just so that I've got a little bit more control over my gradient. And now I can come back in with this gradient and start to kind of bring out this sense of kind of like really ghoulishness and kind of flame happening to this. You see what I mean? So that's kind of like maybe a little bit too faint, but now I've got this in the background on a lowered opacity, and I can also mess around with the color of it to try and get even more of a kind of a glow happening in there as well. So a lot of really cool stuff that you can do when you start kind of messing around with this. I quite like the kind of the purpley kind of glow that it's got, and I like that you can kind of see the circle in the background, so it really kind of gives us this sense that it's like see-through. But then we can also come back in with our gradient, right? And with our gradient tool, I can come in just on the edge and bring the edge back into focus a little bit that I had erased from doing that kind of glow. A lot of the edge had kind of gone away.
Are you throwing in gradients? What are you throwing in there?
I am. I'm throwing in with the gradient tool, except I'm bringing the color back in. So
right.
I don't know if you can kind of see. I don't know if this works if I'm streaming, if I zoom in on stuff. I don't know if it's
yeah, that does work.
like,
yeah.
My gradient's kind of like very kind of weird. But yeah, you can see that's basically what I've done. If I undo that, a lot of this, all it's doing is bringing that back in, but still as a kind of a gradient, right? So I'm working with white now rather than black. So if I do black, you'll see it's kind of like disappearing. If I swap it to white, you get that edge back in, and we get this kind of like inner glow. But I've had to do it myself, but because I'm doing it myself, I've got more control over it, and it's just it's going to be a little bit more kind of interesting. The other thing that I can do, which kind of might be fun, is
I'm just looking at the time. I'm having such a great time, but hey, we've only got about 4 minutes left.
Cool. I'll move very quickly. We can kind of lock this transparency on the actual layer and come in with like a slightly more kind of like blue-ish color. And with our gradient tool, we can do the same kind of thing. So we can add a little bit of this kind of like interesting effect to that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And kind of bring it in. And so let's bring in also, let's kind of just do his skull. So I'm going to do the skull in between those two. Very, very quickly. I'm going to do it in blue.
As you're doing that, just a couple of comments from a couple of people that it's looking really great. I think some of those glowing effects, I think a bunch of folks in chat. Yeah. It's very, very cool what you can do. Like just there's such a simple outline of a drawing, but knowing how to navigate the different effects and the glowing and things like that to create something like that, I think is really impressive. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, there's a lot of
thanks for throwing that in chat, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
It's nice.
Okay, so now you can kind of see, because I've got this kind of like double scale of a layer kind of thing where I've got this like layer in front and layer behind, this skull kind of looks like it's inside the flame, because there's something that's happening kind of in front and something that's happening behind as well. So I'd probably I'd do a lot more work to this going forward. And then I'd also kind of want to get this color in here and start messing around with some highlights in here to get the sense that like that skull is kind of blasting some light around it as well.
Oh yeah, it's a light source now. Yeah.
Like really, really cool. And really nice to kind of work with. It could also be kind of like the light source is coming from this kind of sun that's in the background as well. So it's nice to kind of, mess around with that. So we get a little bit of kind of contrast on both. But yeah, and then I had some type as well that I kind of messed around with that we don't necessarily have time to get into that much. But yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it suddenly turns it from an illustration to a poster with an illustration, right? Like bit of type.
Yeah. So that's it. So that's basically kind of the gist of this, and then just kind of me spending time like getting the line work and these kind of highlights into this painting in a way that I'm kind of happy with, and in a way that makes it really kind of more effective and really kind of glow.
Yeah.
As I need it to.
That's amazing. Thank you. What a great fun stream. Thank you all for hanging out with us, and those that joined us for Annika's stream as well. It's always fun with Halloween here to just have a bit of fun. It's a silly season, so we actually have another stream tomorrow with the wonderful Johanna. So Dark Hours Co is going to be jumping in and doing a session tomorrow as well. So please join us for that. It's at the exact same time as our session today. But thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you so much. Thanks for everybody in chat. Thanks for the comments and questions.
Really appreciate it. And really cool, like trying something a little bit different and then obviously showing your amazing skills at the stuff you know so well. Thank you, everybody. And we will see you next time on Adobe Live. Bye.
Thanks, mate.